Presentation number 2.
Representatives from Double Hall Solutions will provide an updated report on the city's South End community engagement sessions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Absolute pleasure to be here. Mr. Freed, thank you for the opportunity to work with the great South Park community of Port Huron. Tonight we're going to talk about a little bit of our work down there. Just so you know, as we've gone through this process, you're going to hear me refer to it as South Park, the Southside community, Port Huron Southside. All of those are interchangeable for the most part. With me tonight is Amanda Opalewski, who's working for me. She's our Director of Client Engagement. She was one of three others that worked with us on this project that are not with us tonight. Again, looking forward to sharing what we heard. So tonight for you, what I thought I would do is first share you a gift. You should all have received a copy of this book that I use, and actually will reference a couple times tonight. When I read those quotes tonight, you'll understand exactly why I gave you the full book, so you could have the full context of those comments, because they are written a certain way. Doug Griffiths is an author that writes in my language, and I like his passion as a community builder. The second thing I offer to you tonight is an honest disclaimer. I'm new-ish to the consulting world, but I believe a good consultant's going to be honest with you. If you're paying a consultant to tell you exactly what you want to hear, you're wasting your money, in my opinion. Also, a disclaimer to the neighborhood, there may be things that they may not necessarily agree with either. Our job is to take all of the information that we received from the city and also the community and deliver that back to you in a way that makes sense to us, that tries to balance all the different voices that we heard. So just a little bit of a refresher what our scope of work was to get a bit of a lay of the land. Where is South Park? Where does it exist? Who are its people? We spent the 20th and 21st of September here, as well as October 6th. We scheduled a community engagement weekend on Friday, October 14th, and Saturday, October 15th, which we'll talk a little bit about. We took time to assemble the findings and what we heard from the residents that came out to those events. We had an alignment meeting, or what we refer to as alignment, where essentially we're taking our draft findings and we're taking them back out to the community to see if we're on the right track or not. And that was on November 16th at the Reinvestment Center. We finished our recommendations, and now we're here tonight to deliver our findings and our recommendations. So first off, the methodology that we used besides the community visits was over the weekend. We really wanted to engage people in conversation. And so we used writing prompts, asking questions like, what are your hopes? What inspires you? What concerns do you have about your community? And then just open-ended questions like, what other questions, comments, or concerns do you have? Whoops. We've all thought at one point in time as we were growing up, or maybe even now as adults, what it would be like to be a king or queen for a day. So we asked residents, if you had the ultimate power for a day, what would you do in your community? A budget exercise, I believe this is much more effective than doing a dot exercise. All the participants were given an envelope with $1,000 in fake money, and were asked to budget how they would invest those dollars into their community. And then last but not least, we had a giant map, but the wind on Saturday did not want to cooperate with us, so it was not as fun as we had hoped it would be. Altogether, we had approximately 250 comments from about 200 people over the course of those 2 days. The themes that we walked away with, first and foremost, this community is inspired and they are engaged. And I apologize, the fonts are not translating, so it looks like I did a hodgepodge job. Sorry about that. They showed up, first and foremost. They showed up. Between those 2 days, like I said, we had over approximately 200 visitors. The community has visions, and note the asterisk. There is not a unified vision for what should happen there, but there are a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of passion about the potential that this part of the community has. They're ready, but they were ready 20 years ago. As you all know, I think you all know, there was similar types of sessions that were done in 1998, 99, with a report that was provided. It was a Southside Vision 2000-2005, I believe it was. You might already be aware of this, but there's a loss of faith in the local government body, the local government institution. But I think a lot of that is built around misunderstanding as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here. There is a general feeling down there that they're not just physically on the other side of the tracks, but they're treated as being on the other side of the tracks. There is a strong feeling that a lot of the investment over the last 10 to 20 years, when things were going gangbusters in downtowns and to the north part of the city, that a lot of that was being directed up here. Now, perception is reality for a lot of people, especially when it comes to this neighborhood. We talked about the lack of distrust. Again, this is a challenge that you guys have, because from what we heard, a lot of the distrust is based on things that happened decades ago. Yes, there might be more recent things that have happened, but the vast majority of what we heard all stems back to longer history. There's also skepticism about what we're doing right here in this very moment. 20 years ago, they had conversations much like this, but they did not see any tangible results from that. At least that's what they've shared with us. They don't feel represented. Now, we do have a council member, as I understand, that used to live in the South Park community, but currently, as I understand it, there is no elected member that comes from South Park area. Now, I don't know about your other boards and commissions and things like that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But at least from what we heard, there's a big openness there to be proven wrong. I think there's an invitation there to reestablish that relationship with the South Park community. When it comes to their community, they like the past. When they present their vision for what they want to see, it looks a lot like it does now and what it did in the past. South Park was developed originally as a factory town in the early 1900s. It's a walkable neighborhood. It's filled with craftsman style. No thanks when it comes to gentrification. That was a word we heard over and over, and that is a genuine fear that this community has would happen down there, especially with the new development. Rehabilitation, infill, they're all in. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of vacant lots, small and large. And they're okay with this project that's coming in as long as we're doing this type of redevelopment in a balanced way that supports all residents. This is a community that's about all the people that live in South Park. It doesn't matter age, race, socioeconomic status. They want places for everybody there. But we need to get moving. You'll see in the report when you get a chance to spend more time there, there are some trends that are going in the wrong direction when it comes to this part of your community. When it comes to public safety and blight, a lot of the things you would hear in almost any community, more multimodal transportation, let's fill in the sidewalk gaps, let's make new linkages. Is there a way to improve public transportation? How do we make it safer for all transportation users down there? Keep the community policing going. As I was looking at your police department's website, it sounds like there's a strong commitment to community policing. Continue to have your officers building those relationships with the folks down there in that community. And code enforcement, there's a lot of consternation when it comes to code enforcement in this neighborhood. But when I had an opportunity to speak with folks about some of these different violations that were brought to my attention, and I can explain why, they start to get it a little bit more. So it's not don't do code enforcement, but help make more connections to the resources that are offered through Ms. Thomas's office, for example, or how do we engage the community with a volunteer group to make a connection that, hey, this house needs help. Community food access, this is a very emotional topic here. The River District, as it became abundantly clear, especially after our November 16th meeting, this was not just a market. This was not just a place to get food. This was a place of social and cultural connection. This was a market that carried foods that were culturally important to the African American community in South Park, and that is no longer easily accessible. Market to grocery store oftentimes can support other commercial uses. A big box solution is not likely going to fill this void down there. They're looking for a neighborhood-based solution. And so I offer a potential case study that could maybe be looked at a little bit further. This is the Southeast Market in Grand Rapids. Now, yes, Grand Rapids is a much different and much larger demographic than Port Huron, But this is a neighborhood-based food solution that would be worth taking a look at. I know it's going to go on my list of places to visit. When it comes to the businesses to come into their neighborhood, they want neighborhood-based businesses. Again, going back and looking at history for inspiration. Embracing the past, neighborhood design with neighborhood service districts. This is an example of the type of building that used to be in that area. You had the zero lot line, you had the small buildings. Now, it wasn't like a pure downtown or anything like that, but you had more of neighborhood hubs. And then creating an entrepreneurial environment, businesses that are really based on relationships, businesses that create opportunity for the neighborhood. We heard that over and over and over. How do we redevelop this neighborhood in a way that boosts the opportunity, boosts the lives of everybody that lives there? And if you haven't caught the theme, relationships. This community is very personal. They're very relational based. Quality of life and economic mobility through recreation and life skills. The James R. Leonard Center, that being not lost, but maybe closed off or less accessible to the community, is also a source of consternation. When we had a chance to visit the museum in town, we heard the story of Mr. Leonard and the wall that is now inaccessible to the community, especially during school hours. But you have groups like the Sons Outreach and the Athletic Factory that are trying to step up and fill these gaps that are in the community. But it's not just recreation that they're looking for. They're looking for the opportunities to build life skills and support human and social needs. And there's been recent progress. You have, as I recall, senior meals that are coming back and coming back to the reinvestment center. So there is progress in moving things forward. So here's where we have our first quote. So a lot of the challenges with the Southside and the community is all based on history. So I'm going to try to do a metaphor. I might epically fail here, but I'm going to give it a shot. So if this is history, you have a lot of fissures, you have a lot of cracks that make that history tough. But all this history informs where we are living at right now. And author Doug Griffiths addresses this in his book about the issue of clinging on to history so tightly. The attitude that causes someone to live in the past, whether it is holding on to an idea of some glorified utopia or holding on to some injustice that must be righted before anyone can move ahead, is intended to keep everyone looking in the wrong direction. That type of thinking is a distraction from the project, initiative, or investment that will help build your community's future. There is an anonymous quote that reads, "Forget the past. No one becomes successful in the past." It is a valuable quote to hold on to. If you want to kill your community, live in the past, and you and your community are sure to become part of the past, a distant, nostalgic, forgotten memory of the dustbin of history. If you really dig into this quote, it's not about forgetting the past. Let the past inform you, but in order for us to really move forward, we need to get back out on these outer edges. So our recommendations. I'm going to quote this one too, because this was probably one of my favorite quotes from one of your residents. Her hope was that the second generation of those who fought for so many improvements have the resources and support of the community to continue the work, both from an equality standpoint and an improvement standpoint. I found that to be powerful. So recommendation number one, we need to get back and rebuild these bridges with the community. First and foremost, perhaps the creation of a resident advocate role. Now, this wouldn't necessarily just support the Southside community, but there are a lot of challenges that the folks in that part of the community have dealt with. I heard some very personal stories at our November visit, particularly about a resident with having an issue with a landlord and trying to navigate that process. Now, I heard from your community development director, you're working to bring these resources to your community so they can get through if landlord is retaliating because they weren't keeping up and they got reported. So that stuff's happening, but there's more examples where somebody that almost like a social worker type role can take an issue from start and usher it all the way through the process front to back. I've been in local government for almost 20 years, and there are still times that processes and procedures and all of that don't make any sense to me either. So I think that is one potential opportunity. Consider looking at a Citizens Academy. Remember we talked about, I said lack of faith and understanding. I think if there was an opportunity for some sort of Citizens Academy where you could get residents in, again, not just the Southside residents, where they're getting in, they're talking with your directors, they're seeing how the operations work, they see what takes an item from being, possibly it needs enforcement on code enforcement to this is why we need to go and write for this brush that is outside or what have you. The other nice thing about a Citizens Academy is it's an opportunity to build your bench. Again, I don't know what your boards and commissions look like as far as representation from across the community, but at a Citizens Academy or other community events, it's a great place to look for future volunteers. Neighborhood Improvement Authority. David and I have been talking, going back and forth, what is the right tool here? I still think pretty strongly Neighborhood Improvement Authority is the right tool here, and it's the key word, neighborhood. I think if you try to make this about anything more than the neighborhood, you're going to struggle. The Neighborhood Improvement Authority allows you to do a lot of the things you want to do and keep the focus on the neighborhood. For the commercial areas, there's other places, there's other laws that we can lean into to make commercial redevelopment happen. But first, if it's possible, and I know James is good at this kind of stuff, if we can get some legislative tweaks to the Neighborhood Improvement Authority Act, I think we could go even further with this project. I already mentioned there's other tools that we can use as needed. Strategy, I pardon my references to pop culture. There's one in your report, and here's another one. The NIA needs to build one strategy to rule them all. We need one strategy that's going to move this community forward. This is not pushing out other groups. This is not pushing out other agendas. But ultimately, for this to be successful from an economic reinvestment strategy, we need one umbrella and figure out how everybody pushes that forward. In that strategy, let's take some time. Let's look at the market. What can the Southside area support in terms of housing, commercial, and what have you? But we need to think about not just what can it support today, but what can it support tomorrow? Because remember, we're trying to achieve a vision here. Identify and conceptualize priority sites. I'm not a developer, but there are a lot of great opportunities in this neighborhood, and a lot of great opportunities that would benefit the neighborhood, not just, building a big box, calling it good or whatever. We can actually build community here. There's space to do it. Market those opportunities and seek the right collaborators, but know the limits. Anytime you get in a negotiation, you're going to get asked, you're going to get asked, you're going to ask, but eventually you got to know when to walk away. Building a culture of entrepreneurialism and economic mobility. This is about economic gardening. How do we build business? How do we build the economy from within the community and up? Yes, others are welcome in, absolutely. But when we're coming in here, how do we support the community as a whole? I would definitely look into whether or not we could build a business incubator. Is SC4 a potential partner? I don't know. Maybe it's something worth exploring. Again, another case study for you. This is the Nest Collaborative in Mount Clemens. If you've ever been in downtown Mount Clemens, this is a really cool spot. So this incubator focuses on women-owned businesses. They come in, they get mentorship, they get training, they get camaraderie, and they have a retail outlet for their goods and services. Last but not least, do. Please don't let this report sit on a shelf. So many times cities pay for studies and then they sit there and then they get forgotten, and then next thing you know, it's expired and we got to do a new one. This community has been waiting and waiting. But everything I heard, this community is ready to roll up its sleeves, and they're hoping you are too. I leave you with one last quote. In order for this to be accomplished, it's all about collaboration, right? We got to get it past the old history. We got to all work together. We got to make this happen. So again, this quote's a little bit longer, but bear with me if you don't mind. Successfully killing your community often depends on the amount of energy and time you wish to expend in achieving that goal. Passively refusing to cooperate takes very little actual work. Aggressively competing with other organizations or communities takes more daily effort. But if you can induce the culture of destructive competition, the dividends can pay off for years with little effort. Fundamentally, killing your community comes down to refusing to cooperate with anyone. Don't cooperate with other people, other service clubs, other groups, or other communities. Focus on what divides you more than what unites you. Concentrate on making those little arbitrary lines in the sand the real issue. That will allow you to remain fiercely independent, and eventually you will be able to die alone. Thank you very much for your time. Really love the opportunity to work with you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you for all your hard work in putting this together. Appreciate it very much. And that being said, more importantly, I thank all of the residents that participated in this several-day engagement, because I know there was a lot of people there, and we appreciate everything you've given into it, all the time and effort, and we have a lot of information to read here, and we will do so, and we will not put it on a shelf. We will look through it and discuss it as a city council, probably maybe even sometime when we're having a goal session in January. So it's a very long document, so obviously we're not going to go through it all tonight, but we will take the time to discuss it. Is there anything from the rest of the council?
No, I would just like to commend Nate and Double Hall Solutions on a job well done. And I did get here a lot earlier, and I was able to not scan, but actually read it was in here. And it's very well put together, and it's not like it's all over the place. It's like compartmentalized. In order for us to take this is what needs to happen, you know, and we need to do it. And so he just made a job for the city council easy. So let's give him another round of applause, because that is no easy job. And I like the point even more so that he didn't just talk to us in this, you know, telling us what we wanted to hear. He said he's not, he's not going to lie to us, quote unquote. And I'm glad he didn't lie to us, because we would have found it out anyway. So, but I look forward to our goal session, not even waiting to get to the goal session, just to see what we can do now. There's some low-hanging fruit here that we can do without any, real big, any really big, long meeting or something. There's something we can look at and we can do it. And we're going to do that. And we're going to do the hard stuff too. And I'm not just saying that. I'm part of this council, this body, and I expect my fellow council members, Amir, and I know James, he's been on it. We've been doing some things behind the scenes, so to speak, and he's been, trying to push that lever. And it's hard sometimes because, the messenger is always the one that's going to make the difference. Just like you said, we didn't need to bring Nate here to hear you say you don't trust us. We already know that. We knew that at age 4 and 5. Don't trust the city. So there's nothing, there's nothing new. So what we need to do is one thing about trust. You just don't say it. You got to earn it. And this city council has to earn that trust. And with earning that trust, you get to a place where you feel like you belong to a part of a whole city instead of half of a city. So people don't operate like that. I don't care what color you are. If I don't feel like I don't belong, I just can't function out here. You're just in a little space by yourself and you pay taxes like everybody else. So just like he said, don't get stuck in the past and out with the attitudes. We all need to come to the table and get this together, collaborate and learn to work together to have the kind of Port Huron, Southside, East Side, North Side that we need to have. But right now, we're going to be intentional. We're going to be intentional to the south side of Port Huron. So thank you very much.
Any comments from the rest of the council?
I think that covers it.
I think it pretty much does, yes. Thank you. And we will move on with the agenda. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and you have 4 minutes.
Julian Ruck, 1423 Lapeer Avenue, Polly's Place. Tonight I want to start by wishing Southside Initiative good luck, and sincerely. I want the community to come up, every single neighborhood. And I know there are some people involved in that organization who don't like me at all. And if you knew the backstory, you'd know those people were kind of a spin-off of season 2 of Polly's Place. It's very difficult to watch this council give the floor to so many people while continually denying to share the floor in an extended conversation with the Harrison Point City Initiative nonprofit for a neighborhood just down the street, with me, the owner of Polly's Place. See, no charity came forth and gave us money to get started. COVID hit, and me, as a professional entertainer, traveling musician, event organizer all over the country, having come back to my hometown after 20 years away simply to help my mentally unfit mother figure out her retirement. That's why I was here when COVID hit. And I looked around at the city I grew up in and thought, oh my God, it's way worse than it used to be. Way worse. And the longer I've been in this city, the more I can't turn away. Councilmember Lamb, you're a nurse. You understand that when you're walking somewhere, if you see somebody in a medical emergency, you have to engage. You have to, because you have the specialized training. There are some places where if you wouldn't, you could be prosecuted. Okay? I have the specialized training. That's what I've been doing for 20 years. And time again, I've come to this city, I've been ignored, lied about, time and time again. I mean, you want to talk about distrust. I've been the point man bringing urban gardening to this community since 2020. And I have to keep force feeding you information 4 minutes at a time. Not only that, after the last meeting, Mayor Rep approached me in anger for what I had to say. See, these 4 minutes are my freedom of speech. As an American citizen, my inalienable rights. To then reprimand me for what I had to say afterwards is totally unacceptable, because when these 4 minutes are up, the relationship is different. You're the mayor, I'm a citizen. Not only that, Councilmember Archibald came over, and you both had a lot to say with regard to this city doesn't want urban ag zoning. I don't want to have neighbors that have chickens. When I brought up gentrification to you in our argument right there, you rolled your eyes and laughed. There are witnesses. Councilmember Pemberton was there. Police Chief Platzer was there. Can't deny it this time. The distrust is real and for a reason. Okay? You don't need to like me. I'm not here to be liked. There are 7,000 people living in poverty in this city of only 28,000 and dropping. And you've been in charge of it for a decade. Whose fault is that? It's not their fault. It's not their fault. And the proliferation of neighborhood nonprofits is proof we're doing something about it.